At exactly 0315 hours local time, the pitch-black sky over the Persian Gulf felt like a heavy shroud. Viper 1, an F-35C Lightning II, was slicing through the humid air in total stealth configuration. The pilot, a veteran with over 2,000 hours in the seat, sat in a cockpit that was eerily silent, illuminated only by the faint green glow of his augmented reality visor. He was flying dark. No radio transmissions, no active radar pings, and all external sensors set to passive. This $20 billion masterpiece of American engineering was designed to be a ghost, a sliver of carbon fiber and radar-absorbent material that should have been invisible to anything Iran could throw at it. His target was Ogab 44. A legendary underground airbase carved deep into the granite heart of the Zagros Mountains. For months, U.S. intelligence had been tracking the movement of Su-35 flankers and advanced drones into this mountain fortress, and tonight was the night the U.S. would send a message. But as Viper 1 approached the 120 nautical mile mark, the impossible happened. The silence of the cockpit was shattered by the violent, rhythmic chirping of the radar warning receiver. On the pilot's visor, 6 hard-lock symbols blossomed like blood on fresh snow. The S-400 Triumph and the domestic Bavar 373 fire control radars weren't just searching for him, they had him dead to rights. This was a nightmare scenario that defied the laws of modern air combat. Preliminary cyber attacks by U.S. Cybercom were supposed to have paralyzed Iran's early warning network hours ago, turning their screens into static. Instead, it appeared the opposite was happening. Iran wasn't blind. They were seeing everything with terrifying clarity. In less than 90 seconds, 40 Sayad 4B hypersonic missiles would leave their canisters, screaming into the night at Mach 6. America's pride, the F-35, was about to be turned into a rain of scrap metal over the dark waters of the Gulf. The pilot gripped the stick, waiting for the inevitable, unaware that the real battle wasn't being fought with missiles, but with invisible lines of code from a plane he couldn't even see. To understand why the U.S. was willing to risk its most advanced stealth assets in such a dangerous gamble, you have to understand the sheer scale of Ogab 44. This isn't just a runway tucked behind some rocks. It is a $2.5 billion subterranean city, a sprawling labyrinth of reinforced tunnels buried under hundreds of feet of solid granite. Designed to survive a direct hit from a nuclear bunker buster, Ogab 44 represents the pinnacle of Iran's passive defense strategy. Inside its climate-controlled hangars sit over 200 variants of the Shahed 136 suicide drones and the newly transferred Russian Su-35 Flanker E fighters, all ready to surge out and saturate the Persian Gulf with fire at a moment's notice. The base was supposed to be the one place on Earth where the U.S. Air Force couldn't reach, a sanctuary for Iran's air power that could survive the first 48 hours of any total war. However, Iran's confidence was built on a foundation of spectacular deception. 2 years ago, they realized that the U.S. would try to hack their integrated air defense system through the national power grid or the public internet. In response, the Revolutionary Guard implemented a crude but extremely effective measure: air gapping. Every S-400 battery and command center at Ogab 44 was completely disconnected from the outside world. They communicated via buried fiber optic cables 10 meters deep, making them immune to traditional computer viruses or remote U.S. cyber attacks. But in late 2025, a massive security breach occurred that Iran never saw coming. A civilian contractor working on the heavy-duty hydraulic systems for the base's massive blast doors accidentally leaked technical footage on a private forum. While the world focused on the jets in the background, the Pentagon's analysts were staring at the electrical junctions and signal repeaters. They realized that while the base was physically hardened, its digital nervous system leaked a tiny amount of electromagnetic radiation, a heartbeat that could be heard if you had a sensitive enough ear. The U.S. had spent months building a specialized key for this specific lock, and tonight, they were finally going to turn it. As the Iranian S-400s prepared to deliver the finishing blow to the F-35s, a commercial-looking aircraft circled calmly at 45,000 feet just outside the range of Iran's coastal defenses. This was the EA-37B Compass call sign Ghost Rider. To a casual observer, it looked like a billionaire's Gulfstream G550, but inside its fuselage sat the most sophisticated electronic assassin ever built. Unlike the older EA-18G Growlers, which use brute force jamming, essentially screaming over radar frequencies to drown them out, the EA-37B uses what is known as cognitive electronic warfare. It doesn't scream, it whispers lies. Using a revolutionary software-defined weapon system called SWORD, the EA-37B's onboard AI began analyzing the unique side-channel emissions leaking from the Ogab 44 junction points. In milliseconds, the AI identified the exact frequency and pulse repetition interval of the Iranian fiber optic stream. It didn't try to crash the system, it joined it. The EA-37B began injecting ghost packets into the Iranian command information stream through those very electromagnetic gaps. This was a perfect, non-kinetic solution. The Iranian radar operators started seeing impossible targets. One moment there were 2 F-35s, the next there were 200. Their missiles, already in flight, began receiving coordinate updates that shifted the target location by exactly 300 meters every few seconds. The Iranian precision guidance system was effectively being gaslighted. The missiles weren't being shot down, they were being led on a wild goose chase by a digital hallucination. But to maintain this level of control, the EA-37B had to do the unthinkable. It had to leave its safe zone and fly directly into the range of the long-range air defense systems it was currently hacking. The crew of 7 knew they were turning themselves into a massive, slow-moving target, but they also knew they were the only ones who could hold the digital wall together long enough for the final blow to land. The air inside the EA-37B Compass call was thick with the hum of high-powered cooling fans, a necessary byproduct of the massive amounts of electricity being pumped through its AESA emitter arrays. On the mission screens, the world was no longer made of clouds and mountains, but of pulsing wavelets of electromagnetic energy. The crew, a mix of pilots and specialized electronic warfare officers, knew they were entering the kill ring. To successfully inject the SWORD software's ghost packets into Iran's air-gapped defense system, the Ghost Rider had to fly closer to the Iranian coast than any non-stealthy aircraft in history. They were effectively turning a billionaire's business jet into a lightning rod for every missile in the Zagros range. Suddenly, the Iranian reserve battery, a hidden S-300 PMU-2, screamed into life. 24 48N6E3 missiles, each the size of a telephone pole and moving at Mach 6, tore out of their vertical launch tubes. Iranian commanders in the Ogab 44 bunker watched their screens with grim satisfaction, believing they had finally snared the eye in the sky. But on the EA-37B, the response was measured in microseconds, not seconds. The AI didn't just jam the missiles, it engaged in a dialogue with their onboard seekers. By pulsing a high-intensity data beam, the compass call convinced the incoming missiles that their internal synchronization clocks were lagging by exactly 0.5 seconds. In the realm of hypersonic intercepts, where targets move hundreds of meters in the blink of an eye, a half-second discrepancy is a death sentence for a missile. As the weapons closed to within 5 miles, a distance so close the crew could have seen the rocket plumes with their naked eyes, the missile's logic processors suffered a catastrophic state conflict. The data from the ground station told them to turn left, the EA-37B told them the target was already behind them. Paralyzed by the contradiction, the missile's self-destruct safeties triggered, filling the night sky with harmless orange fireballs. The Ghost Rider hadn't just survived, It had made the most feared missiles in the world look like expensive fireworks. With the Iranian air defense network in a state of digital seizure, the EA-37B turned its focus to the physical architecture of Ogab 44. This was the moment for the mission's most audacious move. The underground base relied on massive, multi-ton hydraulic blast doors to protect its runways and hangars from external attack. These doors were controlled by a closed-loop industrial PLC system, something that should have been impossible to hack from the air. But the EA-37B's side-channel exploit had already found the pathway. Using a focused microwave beam, the Ghost Rider's AI transmitted a series of malformed commands that mimicked a critical sensor failure. The base's central computer was told that the primary blast doors were out of alignment by 3 centimeters. In any high-performance military facility, a door misalignment is a stop-everything event. Automated safety protocols immediately kicked in, freezing the massive steel gates in a half-open state. This was the trap. By jamming the doors halfway, the U.S. had created a vulnerability that no amount of granite could protect. The base was no longer a fortress, it was a cage. The hundreds of Shahed drones and the precious Su-35 flankers were now trapped behind a wall of frozen steel. They couldn't take off, and they couldn't be safely moved. But more importantly, the half-open gap provided a direct thermal and physical path into the heart of the facility. The Iranian commanders inside the bunker desperately tried to manual override the system, but the EA-37B was flooding their internal network with reboot loops. Every time they tried to fix the door, the system crashed again. They were locked in their own mountain, watching helplessly on internal cameras as the sky outside began to fill with the roar of heavy metal. While the EA-37B held the digital door open, the heavy lifters arrived. Emerging from the darkness at Mach 2.5 were the F-15EX Eagle IIs, the U.S. Air Force's true bomb trucks. These weren't stealth fighters, they didn't need to be. The Ghost Rider had already cleared the path. Each Eagle was carrying the GBU-72/B, also known as the Advanced 5K or A5K penetrator. This is a 5,000-pound beast of a bomb, specifically designed to do what the smaller 2,000-pound bunker busters couldn't: shatter deep-buried granite. The pilots of the Eagle Squadron used the F-35s as forward observers, receiving the exact laser-designated coordinates of the jammed bunker doors. This was surgical warfare on a massive scale. As the Eagles released their payloads, the GBU-72s used their GPS and INS guidance kits to adjust their flight path in the thin mountain air. They didn't hit the mountain randomly. They aimed for the soft spots, the ventilation shafts, and the jammed door gaps created by the EA-37B. The impact was earth-shattering. The A5K is designed to penetrate up to 150 feet of earth and rock before its delayed fuse triggers. When the bombs detonated, they didn't just destroy the doors, they sent a massive overpressure wave through the entire tunnel system. The primary exits collapsed under millions of tons of falling rock, and the internal oxygen supply systems were instantly incinerated. The Ogab 44 base remained intact deep inside, but its functionality was gone. The U.S. hadn't needed a nuclear weapon to neutralize a nuclear-hardened site. They had used a commercial jet, a few lines of code, and the sheer weight of gravity. As the dust settled over the Zagros Mountains, a strange detail emerged from the F-35's high-resolution sensors. Despite Iran's claims that Ogab 44 was teeming with Russia's most advanced Su-35 Flanker E fighters, the thermal signatures inside the collapsed hangars didn't match the numbers. Rumors have been circulating in the intelligence community throughout 2026 that the spectacular Russian-Iranian military deal had hit a major snag. Some analysts believe that Russia, desperate for its own airframes in the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, had secretly delayed the delivery of the full fleet, leaving Ogab 44 mostly filled with older, refurbished F-4 Phantoms and wooden decoys. This adds a layer of controversy to the entire mission. Was the US attacking a genuine threat, or a massive psychological bluff? If the hangars were half empty, then the real power of Ogab 44 was never the jets, it was the idea of the base itself. Iran had used the mountain to project an image of invincibility, but the EA-37B had exposed the reality. No fortress is stronger than its weakest digital link. The missing Su-35s suggests that Iran's military might is more fragile than their propaganda suggests, a revelation that has sent shockwaves through the regional power balance. The base was meant to be a symbol of 21st century resistance, but in the end, it became a tomb for a fleet that might not have even been there. By 0500 hours, the EA-37B Ghostwriter was already crossing back into friendly airspace, its mission complete. Behind it, the Zagros Mountains were eerily silent. There was no smoke, no massive fires, and no civilian casualties. Just a mountain that had been turned off. This is the terrifying beauty of 2026 electronic warfare. A full-scale kinetic war, which could have cost thousands of lives and trillions of dollars, was avoided by flipping a switch. The US didn't flatten the mountain, they rendered it useless. The strategic message to Tehran was louder than any explosion. We can touch your nervous system whenever we want. The mission proved that the era of traditional stealth might be ending, replaced by the era of spectrum dominance. If you can control what the enemy sees, hears, and thinks, you don't need to be invisible. As the 7 crew members of the Ghostwriter stepped onto the tarmac at Al Udeid, they knew they had participated in the first true non-kinetic victory of the decade. The world's eyes are now on the next unhackable fortress, wherever it may be, because as Ogab 44 proved, in the age of the EA-37B, there is no place deep enough to hide from a line of code. The only question remains: who owns the next switch?